Oh, the interruptions I endure. Here's a few reasons why I do voiceovers for my videos. Hey everyone, I hope you all are doing well today. I'm going to attempt to show you guys how to make a wire wrap pendant today. So first we're going to need 4 20 gauge wires cut at about 35 centimeters in length. And you'll want to straighten these wires out as straight as you can so they lay pretty flat against each other. Next, you're going to need a silver chain. You can use any type of chain. I have a 20-inch silver snake chain. And you're going to need some 26 gauge wire for weaving. For this pendant, I'm going to show you how to do wire weave today. Next, you're going to need a mandrel for the bail, the shaping of the bail. This is a 5.5 millimeter mandrel, my crochet hook that I use. Next, you'll need some flathead pliers. You'll also need some chain nose pliers. You'll need a pair of bent chain nose pliers, some round nose pliers, and a pair of flush cutters. These are called flush cutters because it has this little flush side right here. Last but not least, you're going to need this 18 by 25 millimeter blue ripple Jasper stone, or whatever stone you'd like. You don't need to use this particular one, but an 18 by 25 millimeter stone of your preference. Okay, bear with me folks. I'm going to attempt to show you some wire weaving today. First off, these 4 wires are called base wires. To prepare your base wires, you want to use some nylon flat jaws to straighten each of them out, or something to straighten them out. This way, these 4 wires can lay side by side when they're pressed together with each other. And here I've got 4 laid out side by side, and they're numbered 1 to 4, so that it's easier to keep track of which wires you're going to wrap around during this project. So starting with the top wire, we have 1, 2, 3, then 4. So the count is from top to bottom. Again, base wire number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 1 through 4. I'm hoping you understood some of that. If not, that's okay. Just keep watching and I will show you step by step in this video. But to start off, you want to grab those 4 20 gauge wires and lay them all side by side. Find your center point and then splay the right side or the left side depending on what hand you are. I'm right-handed, so it's the right side. And then we're going to grab that 26 gauge wire and place it between the first and second base wires, then wrap it over the top of the first base wire, bringing it back down behind the 4 wires, creating our first wrap around that wire. Now we're going to grab the end of that wire again, and we're going to place it between the second and third base wires and bring it up through there like that, and then pulling the wire over to the left as far as we can. Now we're going to bring it over the top of the second base wire and then bring it down between the first and second base wires like this, and then pulling it snug and then pushing those wires over to the left as far as we can, or right, depending on which hand you are. And there are 2 wraps finished so far. 2 single wraps. Now we're going to wrap our 3rd base wire. There you can get a good look. So I'm going to grab the tail end of this wire and pull it up between the 3rd and 4th base wires. Now you're going to take your wire and pull it up across the base wires and then back down between the 2nd and 3rd base wires. Just like this. And then we're going to pull that down through there, and nice and snug. And making sure all those wraps are pushed all the way over. And there you can see the 3 wraps. And then pull that wire up and around over the top of the 4th base wire, and then between the 3rd and 4th base wires. And then wrap it and pull it down. And snug that last wrap over. So here you can see all 4 wires are wrapped together with single wraps. Now I'm going to take my tail end of the weaving wire and I'm going to wrap all 4 wires. So I'm going to pull it up over the top of all 4 wires just like this, and then down back behind. And I'm going to snug that up. Pretty snug, but not so snug you smash all your wires together. You just want that wire to lay up nice and flat on top of all those wires without leaving a gap at the top or bottom. And now I'm going to take my weaving wire and pull it back through the 1st and 2nd weaving wire again and wrap it around the back. So we're starting over here again. There you can see the 1st wrap is done. And then I'm going to take my weaving wire, come up between the 2nd and 3rd base wires, over the top of the 2nd base wire, pulling it straight up, just like that, and then back down between the 1st and 2nd base wires. And now we've wrapped our 2nd base wire with a single wrap. And I'm going to push that over. Now grab the wire and pull it up between the 1st and 2nd base wires. And then pulling it up over the 2nd base wire. Like that. And making sure it's nice and snug. And now I'm going to take that tail end of the wire and go between my 2nd and 3rd base wires. Bring it down and around, and then back behind the 4th base wire, bringing it up and around between 3rd and 4th base wires, and then back down, and then pulling it tight. And there is the 2nd row of single wraps. Now again, we're going to take this tail of the weaving wire and pull it back up over all 4 base wires and pulling it snug. So I'm going to show you one more time. You're going to take the tail end of the weaving wire and you're going to pull it between the 1st and 2nd base wires, pulling it up through there, up and around, and back down behind for the 1st wrap of the 1st base wire. Then we're going to go through the 2nd and 3rd wires, back up through them, pulling it all the way to the left. And now I realize I need to spread my wires apart because they're getting tangled up. And oops, I pulled the wrong wire to the bottom. There we go. See, we're not all perfect at this. And there, I've splayed them all out to make it easier to wrap around my base wires. So now we're going to go back up and around that second base wire, bringing it down between the first and second base wire to get that second wrap. And then come up between the first and second base wire, back over the top of the second base wire, down between the second and third base wires, making the wrap around the second base wire. Now grabbing my weaving wire, I'm going to pull it around and under that fourth base wire, over the top, and then down between the third and fourth base wires, snugging up that little wrap I just made. And there we have our third row of single wraps. You can see that nice and neat there. And now we're going to take the weaving wire and wrap around all 4 of my base wires again. And making sure it's snug and tight up against there. And there we've done 3 rows of our wraps. So I don't bore you with wrapping on camera, I've decided I'll go ahead and wrap this off camera, and then I will show it to you when it's complete. And with the magic of video editing, here is the completed 1/2 inch of wire weaves. So there you can see that side, and this is the front side, or the side that shows out. So now I'm going to grab my 25 by 18 millimeter Jasper stone. This is a blue ripple Jasper stone. And I'm going to set that down there onto the table because it's going to be easier to wrap on a flat surface. So setting the bottom of the stone right in the center of those wraps, I'm going to bring all 4 of my base wires on the right side up and around that cabochon. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the left side. So I'm going to bring that up and around over the top of the other 4 base wires, and I'm creating a teardrop shape here. So this might take a little bit of finagling and finesse to get that perfect teardrop shape that I want. So here you can see I'm kind of working with it, trying to get it all nice and straight and even. This does take a little bit of time. And there you can see my basic shape. And I'm just going to use my fingers to kind of straighten out and to smooth out any weird bends that I don't like and get that nice teardrop shape. And now I'm going to take the wires where they intersect and bend them up, bend those base wires up so that the top parts of these wires are going to lay flush against each other once I get them to where I want them. So there you can see it's kind of coming together. And I'm going to recheck and make sure that stone still fits in there nicely, and it does. And now you can see I'm going to take some of my 26 gauge wire and wrap it around the left side of those 4 base wires. And I'm trying to keep them all side by side with each other as I wrap these together. The purpose of this first wrap is to kind of keep that in that orientation, those 4 base wires in that orientation. So I've wrapped this around 3 times so that those wires will stay snug and up against each other before I wrap the other side in with it. So here you can see those wires are stacked nicely on top of each other. And I'm going to wrap around 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Now the only purpose of these wraps is just to kind of keep all that held together with those wires on each side to be side by side. as best as possible. This is really hard to do with round wire. It likes to move and shift. It's much easier to do if you have square wire. So you may want to try that as a beginner. And there it's all pulled together. I'm going to take that tail end and push it down out of my way. And now I'm going to pull out those first base wires on each side because I'm going to use those to make my bail. So there's the first base wire on the right side, and then I'm going to grab the first base wire on the left side and pull that forward, keeping it in a V formation. And then I'm going to splay those back 3 base wires each side, one to the left and one to the right, just so that I have space to work my bail. I'm going to wire weave my bail, and so I need to have space to get up and through there. Now we are going to wire weave our bail. So I'm going to take the tail end of our weaving wire here, and I'm going to bring it back behind the second base wire, up through the first and second base wire, wrapping it around and down to get that first wrap of the second base wire. And then I'm going to pull that up behind both the first and second base wire, wrap it over the top of the first wire, down through the first and second base wire, and back up, pulling it nice and snug, making sure my wraps are snug in there as tight as possible, and then back over both base wires down to the bottom and repeat the first step. So after snugging up my wires, I'm going to take my weaving wire and go back down and under the second base wire, coming up between the first and second base wire and back around the second base wire. Then back around both wires, up over the top of the first base wire, down between the first and second base wires, pulling it nice and snug, and then bring it back up and around the first base wire, and then around both the base wires. There you can see our second row. And now we're going to come around that second base wire again and wrap all the way around it, coming back down to the back side, pulling the wire all the way up over both wires, and come back down between your first and second base wire again, pulling it tight, and then bringing it back over the top, back down over both base wires again. So now I'm just going to continue weaving for about a total of 1 inch in length to create my bail. So again, with the magic of video editing, here is my completed weave on my bail. So now we're going to actually make the bail, and I'm going to want to get this little end of the weaving wire out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my flush cutters and flush cut the end of that weaving wire. Snip that right off. And I accidentally cut more than what I wanted to, so I have to pull that off and out of the way, but thankfully that did not hurt anything and we're all still wrapped around there. So now we're going to take this bail and bend it forward slightly And now we're just going to pull all of these wires to the back, the bail wires to the back of the piece. We're going to take the end of these wires and pull them back up through that teardrop frame. So we're going to push them down all through the center there, the weaving wire and everything. Just push it all down in through there. And then I decide I don't want the weaving wire in there, so I'm going to pull that back out. I'm going to pull those two base wires back up tight through there. And there I'm pulling that weaving wire out. And making sure that bail is centered, I'm going to grab each of those base wires and pull them back around the frame toward the back. Just like this. Making sure it's snug up against the rest of that bail, the base of it. And there you can see it's pulled to the back. And I'm going to take the end of this weaving wire off, and I'm going to show you a little trick. You can pull this weaving wire and just twist it a few times, and it will just snap right off at the base of that wire. So I tend to do that a lot. Now I'm going to take my flush cutters and I'm going to trim the ends of these pieces off. So I'm going to trim it about the same length of the actual frame, about 1/8 of an inch, just like that, and then cut the other side the same length. And with my chain nose pliers, I'm going to grab the ends of these wires and bend them down and in toward the inside of the frame, and then give them a nice little squeeze into there just to tuck that wire inside of the frame, just like that. So I'm going to do the same thing with the other side, grabbing the end, bending it down inside of the frame, and then giving it a nice little squeeze into the frame there. And there you can see they're in there, and I'm going to go ahead and squish that wire back up so they are the same on both sides. And now we're going to splay out these other base wires on either side, and taking this right side, I'm going to loop it around the top of my bail, right over the top of my bail. This is where creativity comes in. You could do whatever you want with these wires. This is just the way I'm doing this. And it just makes it so fun and pretty, I think. But there you can see I've done that loop over the top of the bail. And then I'm going to wrap these wires back behind like that, just to get it all set and in place. And now we're going to work on putting the cabochon into the frame and securing it down in there. So here you can see I'm getting it all centered in there and making sure it all fits well. And you can see how that fits in there nicely. So now I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers, and about 1/8 of an inch from the top of that wire weave at the base of this teardrop shape, I'm going to grab with the point of my pliers and just pull that wire in like that. Make a nice little bend in the wire. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, grabbing about 1/8 of an inch in, and then just pull that wire in behind the piece. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a nice little platform for that cabochon to sit on in the back here, and to keep it from falling out of the frame. So here you can see I'm doing some adjustments and making sure that I get it to look pretty close to the same on both sides. This is a handmade piece, so it's probably not going to be completely 100% perfect and lined up exactly the same, but just as long as you can make it look pretty close, I think it's good enough. We want it to have that character, right? So here you can see it's pretty close. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my cabochon in to the frame, just like that. And here you can see it just lays nicely in that frame. Now we're going to secure the top of that cabochon in. So again, I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and grab this top base wire and kind of pull it apart a little bit so I can get my chain nose in there. Grabbing at the same place, about 1/8 of an inch, I'm going to bend a little bend up onto the side of that cabochon, just enough to come over just slightly the top of it. You don't want to bring it in too far because then you're going to obscure your stone, and you want as much of the stone to show as possible. So here I'm going to do the same thing, about 1/8 of an inch into it, and then pull that up over the top. I'm going to go ahead and just give this a little bit more of a bend on this side, just like that. And there you can see that cabochon is in there now. I'm going to go ahead and show it to you. See, here we can shake it and bounce it around, and that stone is staying put. It's not going anywhere. So now's the time to make any adjustments that need to be made, making sure everything looks pretty even, the same on both sides, making sure the tops of those wires are still lined up together, up there, all 4 of the wires on the top. And now I'm going to go back to grabbing these base wires that I'd wrapped around the back, and grabbing one at a time. I'm going to wrap them over the top. I want these wires to lay nice and flat against each other, but covering up anything that may be sticking out or showing. So I'm just going to go ahead and cover all of that up with all 3 base wires. And I'm going to pull it all the way around to the back again. Just like that, laying them nice and neat up against each other, trying not to overlap anywhere. And then I'm going to pull this all the way down to the right side, bottom right side of that space up top. And now grabbing the top left 3 base wires, I'm going to pull this down and make a little bit of a loop, like just a little curve right there in that wire, keeping all 3 wires lined up and flush side by side against each other. And I'm going to wrap them around between the bottom base wires and the base wires I had already wrapped around the frame. So there you can see I'm going to pull it back around the back, all the way around, just like that. And now I'm going to go back to the original first 3 base wires and pull them back there, and then grab the other 3 base wires and crisscross them over the top. Here we go. Crisscross those over the top of those base wires and make a nice little loop here. Now the best way to get these wires to stay flat, laying up nicely against each other, is to grab the flat nose pliers. And here you'll see me doing that. I grab a hold of this, and now I'm going to pull this around. This just ensures that they stay right up next to each other so they're nice and flat. And here I'm going to give them all a little tug to make sure that they're all pulled up nice and tight, but still laying together. Just like that. And now I'm going to finish wrapping this around the back side of the piece. And I want it to lay nice and flat, so I'm going to put it right between the bottom 3 base wires and that last wraparound. So now to end this, I'm going to cut these first 3 base wires about 1/8 of an inch from the frame, and then take my chain nose pliers and make a little bend at the end of these 3 wires all together in toward the frame, and then just give them a nice little snug little bite into there. And then do the same for the other 3 base wires. We're going to cut it off, leaving about 1/8 of an inch tail. Bend those wires back in toward the frame, and then smush those wires back into the frame. Make sure all of those are nice and snug in there. And there you can see they're back in there. There's nothing poking out and looking really good. Look how pretty that is. Now remember, you guys can do whatever you want with that leftover wire and make whatever designs you want on the front of your pendant. This is just how I chose to decorate my pendant. And I think it turned out pretty decent. What do you guys think? So now I'm going to grab my silver snake chain, and I'm going to thread this on here. And now we have a completed pendant. I really do think this turned out really nicely. And I absolutely love this blue ripple Jasper stone in here. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. And we will see you all next Thursday.